I invited you to send me your questions, and I've gotten some questions. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we're covering what's important to you in these videos, because in the end, what matters is what you do and what happens with your marriage. Not about this video, not about me, not about any of that. It's, does this information help you make a shift in your relationship? And so I'm going to leave out a few details here in order to make sure that there is some anonymity to this, as much as there is when somebody writes in. But let's call this person S. S says, "Hi Lee, I'm very happy to see the new videos you've been doing. My question is, how can you get a third chance at saving a marriage when separated?" Now, I'm going to go into separation and what to do in a separation in another video, but I want to kind of start covering it here. You say, "I regret the separation. It's been almost I'm not going to tell you how long now, and the first attempt did not work, as I, for one, had not made the changes or had the growth I needed to make a difference. Now that I have, I cannot get my husband to trust me enough to try a reconciliation again. In fact, he has adamantly said he is done and wants to move on despite seeing the change in me. He only remembers the bad, it seems. He feels peace being alone, although I'm not sure about the happiness as yet. He may also have developed a connection with someone else recently." We'll also be talking about affairs, emotional and actual or physical affairs in future videos. You say, "We have had a fair amount of conflict and disconnection." Remember, we talked about disconnection and how damaging that can be in earlier videos. "In our," and I'm going to leave out how many years, but it's been a number of years, well over a decade and a half, "together, and he won't try now. A lot is on me." Now, this is another key piece to this. You say, "I really see no hope. Is there anything I can do in this situation? It is so sad for me and our kids. Thank you, S." I'll leave out the name. So there are a lot of issues here, and I want to just kind of pull out a few of the issues, and then we're going to talk some about that. First of all, there's the issue of this is the multiple attempts, right? This is not just like something happened, there's an issue between you, and you worked on it and resolved it. No, this has happened in multiple stages. So you've got multiple attempts at trying to fix this. Number two, you have a lot of resentment built up. And my guess is it's actually resentment on both of your sides, right? Resentment is what happens when you don't finish the processing of the anger. Anger being actually a secondary emotion to hurt or fear or threat. We'll talk about that in another video, but to understand that resentment just eats away. It's like a deep-seated infection in the relationship. Then you bring up separation, and as I said, I'll be talking about that very soon in another video. I've already got that under preparation. So the separation piece we can cover on how to understand separation. And finally is that thing about hope or no hope, right? And so in this process, what you're telling me is there are these layers to this. And so first, before you go, "Oh, I didn't know there was so much going on," let me just assure you, every relationship in trouble has multiple layers to it. That's why it's so hard for it to get unwound. If it were not, you would have already done that, right? And so there are several things that are getting in your way. So first of all, let me just talk for a moment about this multiple attempts. Most people, when they finally find some information, whether it's my system or some other program, they have already been through false starts, attempts to change things that never really went anywhere. Maybe it was the we'll change, where both people are saying, "Hey, let's do, date nights and all these other kind of things that are out there that really don't matter because they don't address the real issue." And then there's the "I'll change, I promise I'll change," that then ends up in not really being fulfilled. You don't really make those deeper changes that need to happen. So the fact is, this is very common for there to be multiple attempts at trying to fix this. Rarely is it the first time when you finally get the information you need. Now, here's the problem with that. So I want you to imagine a line across the bottom that is the time. the time involved in the crisis. How long has this crisis been going on? So that's our time element. And then up and down, we have the chances of survival, so the chances of things working out. And we go from 100% chance to all the way down to 0% chance, right? And so that's our graph line. And what we know from research, from my own research and from others, is that the likelihood of a marriage crisis turning around decreases the longer the crisis has been going on. It kind of makes sense, right? I mean, if you think for a minute about the continuing damage that happens in a relationship, if you don't deal with the underlying issues, you don't resolve the crisis, then you have a lower chance of recovery. Think of it another way. Let's say that your house has been infested, and so it's termites, right? You got termites in your house, and so they're slowly eating away at whatever they can. The wood that they're beginning to eat. And if you find it really quick, right? If you find it when they're just getting there, you can take care of it. Maybe use whatever extermination you need to, and maybe you have to do some repair work on the wood, but it's over, right? You've gotten beyond that. And then you can kind of treat to make sure that you don't have recurring issues. This has a whole lot of similarities with what we want to do with a marriage. But let's say that you maybe don't use anything really strong. You just spray them with some bug spray from outside or something, right? Something that doesn't really kill them. Something that doesn't really penetrate into the real issues that are there. And they just keep on eating. The longer you leave them alone, the more damage they cause because they keep going into other areas. It multiplies too, right? The termites are multiplying. Well, the problems in your relationship are also multiplying. The longer it goes, the more they're multiplying. So that's one factor. The next multiplier of this issue is when you have actually tried but not really follow through. Tried and not really follow through, or tried and not really gotten any results. And so what often happens is that people say, oh, we got to do something different. They bump up their effort, but they make no underlying changes. They kind of are trying to make it look like they're really working hard on this and they're trying to address the issues. But in reality, they're not doing anything to change the underlying dynamics. And because of that, without those underlying dynamics being dealt with, then you have the fact that when you relax a little bit, you drift back. You haven't changed the habits underneath your relating that are addressing the issues that cause the problems. And so because you haven't made any of those true changes, the real changes, you've made kind of cosmetic changes, right? You're working harder, you're spending more time together, and then, life gets in the way again. You drift back to the norm. And suddenly your efforts plummet and you return not just to the crisis, right? But to the crisis worse, because now you've sent the message that it's really not going to change, right? So this is where the hope fluctuation comes in, right? In this letter, it's talking about I'm losing hope. Now, let me just kind of side note that. If you really had lost hope, you wouldn't be watching this video. You wouldn't be watching my videos. You wouldn't be watching or listening to my podcast or reading my books or really doing anything else, right? If you really lost hope, if you went, there's nothing I can do to escape this, you wouldn't be doing those things. So the fact that you're here tells me there is hope, tells me you have hope. So part of what I just want to kind of challenge parenthetically here is I don't have any more hope. I don't believe it. Now, let's talk about the hope of a spouse. Because if your spouse is going, oh, finally we're getting things better, things are improving, we're working on this, and then we drop back to the norm, the broken norm, the hurt norm, then the person gets discouraged. And so where they may have had this level of, I'm willing to work on it, and then they have hope that crosses up and they go, oh, things can change. And then things don't change. And then they go below. So now their level of willing to work on it has actually stepped down. We're down at a lower level than we were before. And that begins to get in the way. So those are kind of some issues to remember here. And so what do you have to work on? So let's talk about kind of just to make it easy to remember, 3 R's. First one, R, real change. That's the first one, real change, which means that you really, really have to make sure that the changes you're making, both in yourself and in the relating, are hardwired in. They become your habit. They become your new way of understanding, right? Not just an act you're putting on, not just a way you're trying to act like you're doing more around the house, or act like you're doing more in the bed, or act like you're doing more, in life, or act like you're being a better person. None of that. You really, really has to be not acting, but being different. And if you're being different, that begins to show. How does it show? Over time. So one of the ways that people then often resort to this is they try to convince a spouse that they've changed, right? And so they try to convince them, tell them about the change, try to help them see that change. Don't help them see the change. Be the change. Just be that change. You've got to really get in. So real change is the number one thing. You've got to do that. And if you need help with that, please find that, whether it's coaching or a program or therapy. Somewhere, really make sure that you get that change settled down, right? That you understand where you need to make shifts in yourself. Remember, I've got 3 C's of connect with your spouse, change yourself, create a new path. We've got to do work on making real change around the connection. We got to do real work on changing yourself, which will allow you to create that new path. Second R, responsibility. I love this word. This is one that when I was talking with my colleague, Jack Canfield, we talk about responsibility. That's the word. Responsibility is responsibility, the ability to respond. We have a choice on how we're going to respond to things rather than react to things or not respond to things. And so responsibility is saying, I take this on. Right now, I may be the one who holds the hope, who holds the change, who is putting in the effort. This is not I'll do it if you'll do it. This is I'll do it, and I hope you join me at some point in this process. I'll do this. I'll stick with this. I'll keep moving forward. That's responsibility. And one piece of that may be making sure that you've apologized, because that helps with the resentment thing that we talked about. Over these decades that I've now been working with couples, I've created this apology letter formula that I use with my clients and actually make it available for my VIP members, because I want them to be able to really step into that in some powerful ways. But it takes some training to do that. Many people kind of miss it at that point. And so part of what you want to do in the responsibility is take responsibility for who you've been and where you've been in the relationship. That is not I am fully responsible for the fact that our relationship is in trouble. It is this is where I am responsible. This is my part of this problem. And I'm going to own it, and I'm going to change that. And so responsibility is our number 2. So real change, responsibility, and finally, restore hope. Remember, in a prior video, I talked about hope as being a combination of knowing where you want to go, knowing how to get there, and the last piece is being willing to get there. Knowing where you want to go, so having a goal. Knowing the way you would get there, having the means, knowing the means to get there, and then having the willingness to do that. That's how you begin to restore hope in yourself, right? Of going, okay, I see a path forward. If you don't have a path, get some help with that. Save the Marriage system at savethemarriage.com. Savethemarriage.com is one piece of how I've created that. I've also created books, a number of books that can help begin that process. And so some of my books I've just kind of surrounded myself with, but they can help you find your way forward. You've got to find some way of going, this is where we're going to get to. And I know how to get there. In fact, in one of my books, Beyond the 3 Barriers, one of the things I talk about is getting beyond the hopelessness of your spouse, helping them to do that by holding on to the hope, by containing the hope and helping them see the path forward. So S, is there anything you can do in this situation? That was your email. Yes, you can. Real change, responsibility, restore hope. Get busy on that. I want to hear how that comes out. I want to hear the good news when things turn around. Okay, if you've got a question, send it to youtube@savethemarriage.com email address. youtube@savethemarriage.com. This is Lee Baucom. I'll see you next time as we continue to work to help you save your marriage.